Star player of the season for their team, the most important player, pound for pound, the third part of the trilogy. We've done Rookie of the Year, we've done most under the radar, and now we've got 3 nominees to put forward here. Let's begin with Aston Villa's Ollie Watkins. 19 goals at the time of recording, from an XG of 16.09, 12 assists, directly involved in 42% of Aston Villa's Premier League goals this season. I think he is absolutely correct when it comes to having him as a nominee, and he's very, very close to being my pick here. We need to talk through it all and just get this decision right. But in terms of, there's no way Aston Villa get anywhere near the top 4 without Ollie Watkins playing, staying fit, and just being absolutely integral. And that's alongside European football and all sorts of away trips. I think it's been absolutely astounding. I think it's one where he can do absolutely everything as a forward. I think he's at a great place there where he's going to thrive. But I think otherwise, so many teams would be looking for a player exactly like Ollie Watkins. I think he does. I don't think he gets the flowers. I think he's absolutely amazing.
I think the key thing you said there, we didn't actually say it in these words, but if you're not fit, you're not it. And he's constantly fit. I think he's only been injured for like 3 days in the last 4 years. And it is, as you said, I think Emery's built a team that suits Ollie Watkins. And I think it's actually quite strange because I look back to the last few seasons and I always felt like when he got in and around the box, he'd snatch at things and he'd lose his composure. This season, he seems to have pieced that together. The Arsenal finish in the 2-0 was like, considering I was looking at strikers like him and go, you haven't touched the ball in 60 minutes, and when you have, you've been smashed by Saliba and Gabriel, and then you've got the audacity to charge it on goal, like fans are going mad and you've dinked it over David Wright. That wasn't the Ollie Watkins of like the last few seasons. I didn't think he had that in him, so I think he's definitely gone up a level, and the fact he scored 42% of a team's goal, I think he's definitely the most important player for a team. You take him out, Villa are not anywhere near the top 6 because they get Duran coming in or Diaby playing as a 9. I think he's been unbelievable.
I think it's a great example of how players can develop and how often we're kind of consumed with these sort of shiny players from these big clubs. Like, he's made his way, I think it was Exeter, Brentford. He was amazing at Brentford and could play out on the left at times as well. Could still do that. And again, you come back to the sort of the completeness of him. You know, big enough to be a target man, can run the channels, can drop deep and get on the ball as well, can drift out to that left-hand side, can score headers. Awesome player. Second nominee, Rodri. Very different when we're talking about the stats here, but a crucial player nonetheless, right?
Yeah, 100%. If you look at Rodri's stats, it's only 7 goals, 9 assists, 1.5 key passes per game. But without Rodri, there's no Man City, basically. And I know that sounds crazy to say, but doesn't he have a record that he's only lost 19 Premier League games out of 169, which is absolutely ridiculous. The fact that he's just the heartbeat of Manchester City and everything that wants to do under Pep Guardiola. And he's been there for 5 years. It's not like this has just been a good signing that he's had 2 or 3 good years. Because remember, at the start of the years, he wasn't really playing as a lone 6. I remember some Man City fans didn't even like Rodri at the start. And now he's come into his own and he's made that position. It's the Rodri position. We are all looking for a number 6 to be like Rodri. When we think of Declan Rice's potential, it's Rodri, basically. So yeah, he's so important, and I think he's the star player for Man City.
I think, just on that, I think a couple of things. Rodri's only lost 19 times since he's been in the Premier League. For context, Manchester United have lost 13 Premier League games this season.
Thanks for that.
Sorry, bro. But I also think that the 7 goals, 9 assists for that type of midfielder, we've spoken about this before, I think he's evolved what a 6 is. Now when you look at a 6, you go like, you need to be able to do everything, because he arrives in the box late at times, he's scoring crucial goals. I look back at last season's Champions League campaign, he's become clutch at times. This is a guy who you're saying is your high volume passer. He's the guy who intercepts and breaks at play. He's a guy who plays key passes between the lines when you need him to. He's a guy who scores headed goals. He's a guy who wins duels in the air. He basically can do everything.
Yeah, and the way you put it, it's totally understandable because we were comparing Ollie Watkins to Rodri. That is a lot of goals. 7 goals and 9 assists is actually quite a lot. And I think the way that Man City are playing as well, kind of the dominance that they have, these players, you see John Stones sort of stepping into these half spaces. And I think Declan Rice was talking about it a little bit as well. These sort of 6s, they're kind of, because teams are so blocked in, they're kind of playing as 10s a little bit because they're so high up and everyone's trying to squish up the pitch. Where previously you thought of a 6 who would just kind of sit there in front of the 2 centre-backs and play safe passes. So, and in those positions, if you lose the ball there, you're in trouble. But at the same time, you need to be making key passes. And I'd love to also know that. I'd love to know a stat of how many times has he been the pass before the pass as well. I think he's outrageous. And I think over the last few years when we've done this show, we've kind of talked about sixes. I think last year when you had Casemiro and Rice and these different players, you were talking about who's the best. I think he's gone clear quite easily.
Also, I think you have to look at him as a midfielder now. I think previously we'd go best 6, best 8. He's the best midfielder. Forget positions. Pep Guardiola only has roles, and he fulfills his role better than anyone else.
Last up, and again, remember, this is star player for their team. So who's the most important player, pound for pound, in their team? Get involved in the comments, guys. Cole Palmer is the final nominee. Nubaid, can you make a case for Cole Palmer?
I got one line: directly involved in 43% of Chelsea's Premier League goals in his first season at the club. There's no arguing that he has scored a lot of penalties. There's no arguing that he's stat padded a little bit. But you also have to take into context how bad Chelsea have been. And I was doing a podcast the other day where someone said we were arguing who the worst team this season has been, and they said Chelsea, pound for pound, are the worst team in the league. Right. So this guy's probably pound for pound been the best player if he can drag his team to the position they're in at the moment.
I think for this category, again, great categories, ESPN, well done. You've got Ollie Watkins' team that's fighting for stuff, right? Obviously semi-finals and the league as well, and the pressure that's there. Rodri, Man City going for the title, going for everything, I guess, as well. That's the one thing that kind of hurts Cole Palmer a little bit, is that they're sort of not really. It was sort of for what? I mean, I don't think they would have got relegated. Maybe. I mean, when we're talking about this conversation, I think he's obviously had an astounding season for them, and they have lent on him massively. But I think in terms of it really, really mattering, I think in terms of being most important, for me, it's down to the other two. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I would agree. I think it's down to either Rodri or Cole Palmer about being the important.
Oh, you're going Cole Palmer? See, I would have Ollie Watkins and Rodri.
I think with Aston Villa have had a great season, but a lot of the talk has been Emery and what he's done. And I feel like Ollie Watkins is a massive part of that. I think he's the main component of that. But I feel like, let's say if Ollie Watkins was not available, I don't think they get to the heights that they've achieved this season. But I still think we'll still see a somewhat base level of Aston Villa. Sure. With Rodri, if Rodri's injured, I remember when Rodri was injured at the start of the season, I think when they played Arsenal, the hope that gave Arsenal fans was like, Rodri's out, so we're going to beat them. It wasn't that, we're going to play City and they're missing. It was Rodri's out. When Rodri's out, you feel like you have a chance against Man City. And with Cole Palmer as well, even though Cole Palmer is great for Chelsea, he's basically their best attacking outlet, you can still beat Chelsea if Cole Palmer plays. So that's why I really think, even though I would say if I'm just going to single one out, I think it's Rodri. I think pound for pound, he's just so important to that Manchester City team. It's interesting.
That's why I was saying Ollie Watkins and Rodri, is because in terms of being irreplaceable, even Cole Palmer, I'm not saying he's at the same level, but on the right-hand side or an attacking midfield, certainly on the right-hand side, you can play Madueke, who's I really like as a player. But Rodri, you cannot replace. And Ollie Watkins, I think you cannot replace as well. So I'll give my answer at the end. Nubaid, who are you going to go for?
Rodri is the best player in the division by, I think, quite some distance. But in terms of pound for pound, the most important player, as I said it before, Ollie Watkins, you can't replace this guy. There's no guy can do the job that he's done at Villa, and also the effect it would have on Villa this season is astronomical. There would be nowhere near a top 4 battle.
Okay, Tony, I think Rodri, you going to go for?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go for Rodri. I feel like pound for pound, he's just so important to City and what they do. And even though I totally do agree with you with Ollie Watkins, I feel like even if they got another, let's say Villa go get a bad man striker, they could probably replace the goals. Probably not the assists, but I feel like Villa can replace those goals if they go get a really good striker. It's all very hypothetical, but they could. Yeah. Replacing Rodri, I don't know a player in the world that can do Rodri's role the way he does it right now. So it'll be very hard to replace Rodri.
Pound for pound.
Do you know what? I think the thing for me is that it's tight, because Man City, in terms of how good you got to be to win the league, everyone thinks about that from Arsenal's point of view and Liverpool's point of view, but because they are still pushing, Arsenal obviously right to the end, Man City have had to be perfect as well. That said, I do think they have such control on most games, and so I think although Rodri is utterly irreplaceable and it's very tight between the two, the scoring of goals changes the game, and so for me, I think it's Ollie Watkins personally, but it is very, very close. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments down below.